Thank you for joining us to learn about and provide feedback on the IH-35 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. The purpose of our meeting is to help you find out more about the IH-35 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, learn what we heard from the public at our previous public workshops and how that input has been used so far, review the alternative concept development and screening process, present the results and recommendations from the IH-35 PEL study, and find out what the next steps will be in identifying improvements for IH-35 in the study area. To understand where we are, we first need to know where we've been and why we are conducting this study. The IH-35 Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL, study area is 24.9 miles long and includes IH-35 from Hubertus Road, FM 1103 in Schertz to IH-37 US 281 in downtown San Antonio, and Loop 410 from IH-35 in northeast San Antonio to IH-10. The goal of the PEL study is to help plan for long-term transportation improvements on IH-35. The study will engage stakeholders early and often throughout the planning process, identify the transportation needs and issues within the study area, identify potential solutions called alternative concepts to meet the identified needs and evaluate them for their potential impacts, and recommend viable transportation alternative concepts that can be carried forward into future, more specific environmental studies. Previous planning studies, such as the Northeast IH-35 Corridor 1996 Major Investment Study, the My-35 Plan, and the San Antonio-Bexar County MPO Mobility 2035 Plan, have identified a need for transportation improvements along this vital corridor, but have not been advanced to the environmental study process for further development. We believe it's time to finally address these needs. A PEL study provides a tool for re-engaging the public and agencies in developing improvements for this section of the IH-35 corridor, creates a link between past, current, and future transportation decisions for this area, thus potentially minimizing any duplication of effort and time lost between studies, and potentially shortens the time needed to implement a project by allowing planning-level decisions to be carried into future, more detailed environmental studies. We began the study in September of last year. We kicked off the process by looking at the previous studies that had been done in this area and identifying what needs and goals are still relevant today. That information was presented to the study's Technical Advisory Committee and Community Advisory Committee last fall and to the public at 2 public workshops held in November 2011. At the public workshops, participants provided input on local problem areas and general congestion and safety concerns. All of this local input was used to develop a draft need and purpose statement for improvements to IH-35 within the study area and to help identify the basic concepts and values that should be incorporated into the draft solutions or alternative concepts for IH-35. The draft need and purpose statement was presented to the Technical Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee, and to the public in February of this year, along with the proposed factors and objectives to be used in evaluating draft alternative concepts for the study. The input gathered from these meetings was used to refine the need and purpose statement, develop draft alternative concepts, and begin the screening process for evaluating the draft alternative concepts. In May and June of this year, refined draft alternative concepts were presented to the Technical Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee, and to the public, along with a proposed alternative evaluation process. Based on input received from these meetings, the IH35 PEL study team evaluated the alternative concepts and will be presenting the results and recommendations from the evaluation process at this fourth and final round of public meetings. So far, based on technical analysis and agency and public input, the need for improvements in the IH35 PEL study area is primarily to address increasing traffic demand and congestion, inadequate roadway capacity, roadway safety and operational concerns, structural and functional roadway deficiencies, and limited integration of IH35 with other existing and planned transportation modes. Based on the needs identified in the study area, the purpose of the IH35 PEL study is to develop transportation alternatives that improve mobility and safety in the IH35 corridor in a manner that will manage vehicle congestion for the projected 25-year planning horizon, promote efficient use of existing transportation facilities, minimize impacts to the natural and built environment, and complement other modes of transportation and economic development initiatives in the region. After the need and purpose for improvements was established, various transportation concepts were examined to see which approaches would be the most successful at addressing the issues in the study area. This graphic shows a high-level overview of the alternative concept development and evaluation process used in the IH35 PEL study. First, a universe of alternative concepts was developed based on previous studies, technical analysis, and input received from the Technical Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee, and the public. These alternative concepts included expansion of the existing IH35 facility, construction of a new highway, expansion of parallel roadways, implementation of rail, transit, and truck improvements, and operational and demand management strategies. Next, a high-level qualitative analysis of the universe of alternative concepts was conducted to determine which concepts, on their own merit, could potentially meet the need and purpose of the IH35 PEL study. If an alternative concept was determined to not meet the need and purpose, then it was recommended for elimination from future consideration as a standalone alternative. Though some of these concepts could be evaluated later as potential complementary solutions in future studies, as depicted on the right side of this diagram. Those alternative concepts that could meet the need and purpose as standalone concepts were then recommended for more detailed study in Phase 2 and were presented to the public and advisory committees earlier this summer. Based on the public and agency feedback and technical analysis, a reduced set of alternative concepts was then analyzed in Phase 2 to determine the concept's relative ability to improve mobility in the study area while minimizing impacts to the built and natural environment. Today, we will be presenting the results of the Phase 2 analysis and the recommendations for which standalone alternative concepts should be carried forward into a National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA for short, study for a more detailed analysis. Based on the analysis conducted during the alternative evaluation process, it was determined that adding highway capacity to the existing IH35 facility would be the relatively most successful approach to meeting the need and purpose of the study and to addressing the long-term mobility needs in the corridor while minimizing the potential for impacts to the built and natural environment. Therefore, this alternative concept is being recommended for further environmental study along with the no-build alternative, which is a required baseline condition for consideration in all NEPA studies. Once a recommendation is carried into a NEPA study, There are many project-specific elements that must be explored further, including the number of additional lanes to add to IH-35, specific engineering approaches and design configurations, project financing considerations, and project-specific impacts associated with adding lanes to IH-35. Now that we have discussed the results of the alternative concept evaluation process, it's time to turn to the results of the overall IH-35 PEL study. At the beginning of the IH-35 PEL study, we noted that the intent of such a study was to create a link between the planning process and the environmental study process. We believe we have accomplished this over the last year with the following results that can feed directly into a NEPA study. We have identified a need and purpose and have defined the overall affected environment in the study area. We have recommended 2 alternatives for further study in NEPA, including added highway capacity to the existing IH-35 facility and the no-build alternative, which is a required baseline condition considered in all environmental studies. Additionally, we have eliminated 6 concepts from further study as standalone solutions in NEPA, including an operational and demand management only concept, a rail only concept, a transit only concept, a truck lanes only concept, a new location highway facility concept, and a concept involving expansion of a parallel roadway. Although the operational and demand management only, rail only, and transit-only alternative concepts have been eliminated as standalone concepts in this process, they have been identified as potential complementary transportation systems and will also be explored further in NEPA. Finally, the IH-35 PEL study has allowed us to re-engage the public and agencies in the planning process, which will be extremely important as we move forward into more detailed studies. After completing this 4th and final round of public meetings and reviewing the comments received, the next steps will be to finalize all of the IH-35 PEL study technical reports and then request a concurrence from the Federal Highway Administration on the results and recommendations made in the study. Then, a formal NEPA environmental study will begin, building off the analysis and results of the IH-35 PEL study. This concludes our overview presentation. Please feel free to explore the information at your own pace, ask questions of staff, and provide comments at the public meeting comment station or to the court reporter. You are also welcome to visit our website at timefor35.com and to mail or email your comments to the addresses shown here. All written comments must be submitted by October 24th to be included in the public meeting record. Your feedback is very important to us, and we appreciate the time that you have taken to visit with us and share your thoughts.